Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving straight into a really profound, highly experimental text by Max and Claude called The Slot and the Cathedral. And right off the bat, you should know this isn't your standard narrative. It's what you might call a stereo narrative. We're going to examine the exact same moment in time, but experienced through two entirely different human apertures. And as we'll see, both of these perspectives are not only valid, they are absolutely necessary for building the world we actually live in.
Okay, let's get into the core premise. The text opens with this beautiful quote, and it just brilliantly sets the stage for our two main subjects, Elena Vasic and Domen Kern. They share the same city, they share a very specific Tuesday morning at exactly 9:21 a.m., and they even share a profound barometric moment inside the municipal records building. But here's the catch. They never actually meet. They're parallel rivers. Neither has a clue the other exists, but as we go through this explainer together, we essentially get to be the valley that knows both.
Now, the whole thing actually hinges on this concept borrowed from physics called criticality. Think of it as that exact threshold between states, like water at precisely 0 degrees, right in that microsecond before it decides to become ice. So at 9:21 a.m., this inciting incident, this sort of phase transition, strikes the records building. And what's absolutely fascinating is how this exact same moment of criticality hits two different people and affects them in completely opposite yet equally profound ways.
And here is how that split actually plays out. On one side, we have Elena. She experiences this moment as the cathedral. She essentially becomes an undamped system, suddenly perceiving the overwhelming, profound reality of absolutely everything around her. But on the flip side, we have Domen. He experiences the slot. Domen is a perfectly calibrated system in equilibrium, so after feeling that exact same pressure change in the air, he literally just goes right back to processing his paperwork. We're going to explore both of these distinct apertures to see how the exact same reality passes through them.
Let's start with Aperture 1, the cathedral, and what it actually means to experience the uncompressed world.
We're following Elena here, who is a fresco restorer. At 9:21 a.m., she essentially wakes up inside an uncompressed file. She's perceiving the world at this overwhelming full-resolution level, and her nervous system completely reorganizes around it. Simple things like breakfast suddenly take her 40 minutes. Why? Because when she looks at an egg, which for most of us is just a quick grab for protein, she doesn't just see food anymore. She literally sees the entire history of a hen and a farm up north. She actually has to stop going to large supermarkets entirely because the sheer density of 12,000 products loudly declaring what they are is just calibrationally exhausting for her. She's constantly seen what the text calls the ground layer, that deep historical reality resting just beneath ordinary everyday things.
But here's the really crucial takeaway. This phase transition didn't paralyze her. It didn't force her into some kind of monk-like withdrawal on a mountaintop. Instead, it just totally changed the quality of attention she brings to her daily life. As the text puts it, she's learning to take longer paths simply because the longer path passes through more of the world. She is fully engaged with reality, just turned up to a maximum level of exposure.
This new vision plays out incredibly in her professional life. There's a scene where she's examining a 15th century Madonna painting, and she isn't just looking at damaged azurite paint. She actually breaks down crying because she can feel the specific, warm hand of an anonymous painter making sincere, deliberate decisions hundreds of years ago. She's connecting directly with a human being who's been dead for 5 centuries, all translated through brushstrokes on a wooden panel.
Now, let's shift gears to Aperture 2, the slot, and look at the grace found inside a calibrated routine.
We are pivoting back to our second river, Domen Kern. He's a senior documentation processor who felt that exact same 9:21 a.m. pressure drop, but just went right back to his forms. To really get Domen, we have to completely rethink the word slot. The text is super clear. Do not view him as some tragic, numb guy trapped in a cubicle. He's not asleep at the wheel. A slot is a shaped emptiness. Domen is a perfectly calibrated channel that allows the physical world to happen. He doesn't obstruct, he enables.
Just think about his daily routine. He receives a variance form, thoroughly verifies the reference, stamps it with practice repetition, and places it on the process stack. Boom. He does this roughly 70 times every single Tuesday. And by doing this, he is the silent ground layer making real, tangible things possible. Because of his quiet stamping, actual kitchens get built, staircases get installed, and heritage repairs are legally protected. He is literally the quiet foundation of the city's reality.
Now, Domen's own phase transition is completely different from Elena's. It's not a sudden lightning bolt. Over the course of a year, it's more like a slow, quiet clearing of water. It starts in October when he just notes that slight pressure change. But by February, he actually pauses on his commute to really look at a 19th century carved stone face above a doorway. By August, he's floating in the Adriatic Sea, just totally blissfully present. And by the following October, he notices a tiny single new bud on his desk cactus. He's becoming more porous, more present, just one tiny incremental moment at a time.
Which brings us to the third part, porosity and connection, or really, the space between them. As we start looking for the hidden links between Elena and Domen, you realize they share way more than just a timeline. The space between them is where the real magic of this text lies, and it actually comes down to architecture. The Records building was designed in 1906 by Franjo Horvat, an architect who obsessed over porosity, basically the permeability between civic functions. Because all the departments share this massive central atrium, it means that at 9:21 a.m., Elena out in the atrium and Domen over in the West Wing were literally breathing the exact same air. Everything is touching everything else.
And here is the absolute jaw-dropper that brings their two rivers crashing together. Elena is out there meticulously restoring a 1438 fresco of the Annunciation. But that fresco is only legally allowed to exist year after year because Domen Kern is sitting at his desk, stamping the continued care documentation submitted by her exact studio. They are completely 100% dependent on one another, actively building the exact same world, without ever knowing the other exists. It really makes you think about the unseen routines from complete strangers that make your own day possible, doesn't it?
There's this moment where Elena is teaching a student about that Annunciation fresco. She tells them that the real subject of the painting isn't the angel Gabriel, and it isn't Mary. The subject is the space between them, the interval where the connection actually happens. And honestly, that brilliantly illustrates the entire text. That unpaintable space between Elena and Domen, the air they share, the quiet, blind collaboration they're engaged in, that space is the point of the whole story.
All right, finally, let's synthesize this dual aperture by looking at both doors.
This right here brings us to the core argument of the text, and it completely shatters a very common, tired cliché. It utterly rejects the idea that a mystical, uncompressed awakening is somehow vastly superior to a bureaucratic, form-processing Tuesday. The authors insist point-blank that the phase transition and the form processing are the exact same event. They're just emerging from differently shaped apertures. The light passes through both of them equally. Elena's high-resolution vision and Domen's quiet, calibrated thoroughness, they are completely equal in reality.
It all boils down to this beautiful redefinition of the word restoration. It's not about returning a painting or a person to some original condition that doesn't even exist anymore. It is about returning a thing's capacity for relationship. Elena restores a painting's capacity to connect with a viewer sitting in a chapel, but Domen, through his forms and his repetitive stamps, restores a citizen's capacity to connect with their city. They are both, in every sense of the word, restorers.
Both paths are valid, both are equal, and both are absolutely necessary to build reality. The cathedral and the slot are literally the exact same building. So, as we wrap up this explainer today, I want to leave you with one final thought to reflect on. What shape is the aperture of your attention right now? Which door are you using to experience the profound, ordinary reality of your own day?